Hello, this is Brother Denny. Welcome to Charity Ministries. Our desire is that your life would be blessed and changed by this message. This message is not copyrighted and is not to be bought or sold. You are welcome to make copies for your friends and neighbors. If you would like additional messages, please go to our website for a complete listing at www.charityministries.org. If you would like a catalog of other sermons, please call 1-800-227-7902 or write to Charity Ministries, 400 West Main Street, Suite 1, Ephrata, PA 17522. These messages are offered to all without charge by the free will offerings of God's people. A special thank you to all who support this ministry.
Let's talk a little bit about makeup and jewelry. Good health and perfect cleanliness will bring a natural rosiness and beauty that paints cover up and they cannot compete with. There is something so refreshing about a radiant, clean countenance. As soon as you put paints over there, you replace that innocent, fresh look with a look of hardness. You don't realize it sometimes. You think, well, if my eyelashes would just be a little darker, I would be prettier. You have no idea how much innocence you just erased from your eyes. You gave yourself a hard, cold look. And I kind of discovered that since we live in Lancaster. My eyes were so open already with all the flavors around here. It was really an adjustment to me, believe me, when we moved down here. And I saw these ladies, and once in a while I would see a lady that had kind of this hard, cold look, but she had a veil, and I'd kind of look at her. She had so much the countenance of a worldly woman. And I just kind of studied her face, and it was just kind of amazing to me. And you know, all of a sudden it dawned on me, it's her makeup. That's what's doing it. She's erasing that clean, clear look. And do not apologize for not using makeup to the world. You are truly like a breath of fresh air to them, and you don't realize it. I've had a woman comment to us girls when she was around some Mennonite girls. She said, "You are just like a breath of fresh air." Don't cover it up. Don't become like the world and lose that very gaze that is going to draw other people to Christ. It's your radiancy that is your tool to witness for Christ. Jewelry often puts a silly and vain look to your features that is not becoming to a princess. It cheapens the value of your radiant face. It does. Okay, let's talk about modesty at home a little bit. Some time ago, the brothers here had a meeting, and they asked for a raise of hands of all the brethren that were aware of incest. Does everybody know what incest means? Incest means, it's a proper way of wording it.
Anything sexual taking place.
Okay. Incest means anything sexual taking place within the immediate family, with a father or with a brother. He asked all the brethren that are aware or know of a situation like that to raise their hands. Would you believe it, in our circles, 50 men raised their hands? Almost 50 men. Being modest in our home is important. We often think, well, I'll wear out my dresses. And there is a little bit of room for that, maybe. But when is it right to be inconsistent, really? Do you believe in modesty if you're just modest when you go away and you're not modest when you're home? These things that these men knew about would never, ever happen if girls and women and men would dress modestly and stay in their place. Leviticus 20:17, "And thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, nor of thy father's sister, for he uncovereth his near kin, they shall bear their iniquity." This is God's heart. Leviticus 20:19 says, oh, okay, that was Leviticus 20:19. And if you saw your uncle or your aunt's nakedness, you were punished for it. Leviticus 20:17, it brings out that God cuts off a person from the tribes of Israel if they only saw their siblings' nakedness. He hated it. Incest would never happen if fathers, brothers, and sisters wouldn't have the capacity to lust. It is often not, it doesn't happen very often, but it can and it does happen. Are you strong enough to avoid anything that will give the devil a chance to plant a thought into your brother's mind, even if he would never consider carrying it out? Are you a tool of the devil? We think, well, I gotta let my hair down in my home. We can just relax. And it's true, there are certain things we can relax in, but we do not relax in the area of modesty with our brothers and with our father. How far you want to go with your sister? Ask your mother. She can give you some advice. And how far you want to go with your mother? That is up to you and your mother. Your mother did have you in her womb, and I realize there is a close relationship. I personally do not want my daughters to ever see each other naked after they're old enough that I quit bathing them together. I want them to have respect for their own body and respect for each other's body. And there's so much that happens, and thoughts go through your mind, and pressures that happen when people see each other. It's just not wise. It's just, you're avoiding so much, and you are putting a respect in each other for each other. Another thing I really have a burden for, and this is swimsuits. A lot of us think it's okay to be immodest when we swim. Was Christ ever inconsistent in anything he did? Isn't he our role model? I'm not saying you can't go swimming, and you can make some fairly modest swimsuits, but I do not advise boys and girls to go swimming together, period. Because even if you wear modest swimsuits, they really cling to you as you come out of the water. But that stuff is creeping in. It is creeping into our circles. Girls go swimming with each other after a bit. The only difference between that and being naked practically is that they have a painted-on swimsuit. It is very immodest, and they go to places, they think, well, hopefully nobody comes, but there's a chance somebody would, but hopefully not. And if it is, well, I'm not responsible. You are responsible if anybody sees you and lusts after you. Take responsibility on yourself. It wasn't that person's fault that you were there. It's your fault. Your own feet took you there. My question to those that do is, why is immodesty okay sometimes and other times not? It's when we start becoming inconsistent that we start broadening these inconsistencies, and we think, well, if it's okay when I go swimming, then it's okay to have this little bit in this area. And I truly feel sorry for you if you like to swim, because I realize this is really a hard statement, but it's truth. I truly believe this. I feel that going swimming is no exception for modesty for you. And the thing is, if you do it as girlfriends, or you get really used to it with your brothers or something, after a bit your brothers or your sisters get married, and then it's just such a little step away, your in-laws, and they will go, they'll swim with you in their swimsuits. And do you realize the man you are swimming with is absolutely no relation to you? He cannot but help make a mental statement or thought in his mind as to if you are good looking or goodly shaped, or if you would, and these thoughts run through, even if they're totally victorious. Are we going to let him battle with the thoughts? We shouldn't even let a man battle with the thoughts. Okay, let's talk about feminine attributes, things that enhance femininity or respect. One thing I would like to say to you, and especially with Bible school coming up, is how you move through a crowd of people. If there's a whole big crowd of people, girls sometimes tend to get kind of stiff and they kind of go like this, you know, and they squeeze themselves between, and the furthest point out of them is their bust. How many of you know what I mean when I talk about the shock that goes through you when somebody hits your bust? There is just like a shock wave that goes through you. And assuredly know it goes through the other person too. And when you're going here through Bible school, I would encourage you, it is very crowded and it is hard not to sometimes bump where you're not supposed to. I would encourage you to put your arm over your chest as you move through. I've learned that already. In big crowds of people, I can move so much more easily and at rest if I put my arm in front of me, right over my bust as I walk, to hide that, to not give it a chance of bumping into something. And it, once again, it can, in a split second, give a boy a wrong thought or give you a bad name if you're like this trying to squeeze between people. Okay, let's talk about splayed legs. I should have a chair. Well, I can sit here, I guess. It is very unfeminine to sit like this. Besides, it's immodest. You can stand up if you can't see. If you sit with your legs far apart, and your skirt falls down between your legs and your hands are in there, it's giving you a focal point right in an area where you don't want that. And also when you sit, let your skirt be loose and feminine. Don't tighten it around you that your legs are very, very clearly defined depending how you go. It's a little hard to do it with this one. Careless lounging, laying around on the floor in front of people, it puts you just a notch down in respect for other people, and they hardly realize it and you hardly realize it, but it does work. And stretching in front of people, it's those things that a true feminine woman tries to avoid. It just puts a kind of a improper view of you, or just, it kind of gives you a mannish name, or not very feminine. And we need to strive to glory in our femininity that Christ has given us, to glory in being what he wants and to glorify him through it. Another thing I'd like to talk about is refined speech. Sometimes our friends put a lot of pressure on us young ladies, and after a bit we are selling our femininity so cheap. We say words like shoot, shucks, gosh, oh, you know, it just goes on and on. Are you actually willing to sell your femininity so cheap? That really puts something less than the best in people's minds about your femininity. You just don't appear really feminine when you say a lot of loose words like that. Not only that, are you actually willing to totally override Jesus' teaching on idle words? That's a burden to me. Many people just think it's swearing, but he's talking about idle words. He's not just talking about swearing. There are many things that are not wrong in themselves. My goal for you is that you would look up to the heavens and you would have the goal of being totally above reproach, not going for anything that is questionable, not because it's questionable, but we don't look at those things. Good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good is better and the better best. And that's how we as princes do. We strive for the best we can imagine. We don't try to sit back and see what can I afford to do and what can't I. Put the highest goal in your mind of what you can be and you strive for that. A note to the tender-hearted. Modesty means moderate. A sailing ship of a dress can also attract undue attention. You relax under your authority figures. Sometimes we get so conscious of modesty, we make so many inches and ruffles, and these things are good, but if we go overboard, we're drawing attention to our dress anyways. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, be a moderate in this, be as modest as you can, but you don't have to wear a dress, you know, that's a foot out either side of you, because that draws attention too. A note to those who might not be virgins. I know that there are girls that might not be virgins. If you give that part of yourself to God. Maybe you don't feel like even striving for this because you feel like you've lost it already. God can make you that you feel like a virgin, whether you are one or not. He can cleanse your spirit. He can cleanse your heart to the extent that you have a total new start. And when you go to your marriage, you feel like a secret and you feel like a virgin. There is nothing below God. I'm going to say something that is going to shock you, but to show you that I am serious about modesty. Within the last 2 weeks, a godless boy was watching a princess walk past, and he went like this. "Oh, isn't that a hot one?" I felt like my heart was breaking for hours afterwards. That princess is in this room. Are you selling your good name, your femininity so cheaply that the devil's servant, a godless young man, can gloat over you? This is serious. We think, well, I believe in modesty. It doesn't come close home. Just think about it. It does come close home. Reach for the best that you can possibly reach for.
Well, thank you, Dora. If your heart wasn't challenged by any point, I wonder if you have a heart. So many wonderful points there. I had a couple thoughts I wanted to share just briefly when Dora was speaking about hose. Something that we have discovered, and probably many of you have, if you shop in many of the stores around here, they have hose by, if I'm not saying right, denier. It's the thickness of the hose, 20, 40, something like that. And you can get hose that are hose, but they're thicker. You know, they're not as thin. Some of them are called opaque. If you have a tendency toward being hippie, I find that hose kind of holds you a little firmer, and that can be a real positive, especially if you're wearing knit dresses, that the hose can keep you from jiggling, especially if you're a little heavier. I'm not saying you have to wear hose. I know a lot of our young ladies wear just a panty that kind of holds them more. This mirror idea is excellent. You can also allow your mother to be your mirror, walk and let her see. You do the same for her. How do I look from the back, the side, the different angles? Also, I wanted to mention on swimming. Dora, I love to swim. You said if you love to swim. I used to be a lifeguard in my life before I was a Christian. But we have found making a swim outfit out of denim, making it mid-calf, making it a culotte so that it doesn't come up. We found you can swim very well, but we still don't get out of the water with boys in the water. You know, we swim in a pond and the water is not clear, but getting out, even denim still goes against the bottom, and it's just not like you'd like it to be. A blouse underneath, you know, the jumper, and it's actually as modest or more modest than what most people are wearing in the room today, but the sensitivity there. By the way, those magazines are such a bondage. I grew up with them and have suffered so much from them. But Dora, do you know that those women, the models who wear the jeans, they have a special machine that zips them into it because they can't possibly do it. It's an electrical machine that gets them tight enough to reveal the hips that way. Many of those models have had their lower ribs taken out surgically so that they can appear that way. Bust implants, exercise 3 hours a day, lather themselves with shiny stuff. It's so unreal. You know, it's just not even practical to even think of it, comparing yourself. Oh, yes.
I have actually heard a way that they use their computers to overemphasize certain points.
Mm-hmm.
So people are modeling.
No. It's totally unfair. Do we have some questions? Did something come up in your mind that you would like to see discussed a little further?
I had a question when Dora was talking about the length of a dress, and I like that a lot about your comment about curves and just the underside not showing. And lately I've been thinking a lot about, well, the dress works fine till I'm going up the stairs, and then it's either dragging and getting dirty, or I realize I'm pulling it up. And then who's behind me as I'm kind of pulling it up? So the question was a general one to other people walked further with that and kind of have tips on what do we do with that.
I want to say, first off, today I have on a dress that's about 7 years old, and it's very long. I don't wear my dresses this long anymore for that very reason. When my church dresses become my medium dresses, become my everyday dresses, I found I couldn't, I can't work in them if the skirt is real full, because if your skirt isn't as full, it doesn't sweep the floor. But Dora, I appreciate that too. Let me see up here. If you remember from Denny's teaching on the spirit of modesty, he was talking about the calf muscle here, and a harlot, actually the split came up so that whole curve did show. And I thought that was a really good thought that Dora had about the underside of the bust and all, because lots of people do have more curve than others, and it does make it more difficult. Does anybody have a thought about going up the stairs? Now, tell me, I have on a real long dress, maybe you can just tell me. If I go up the stairs and I'm catching the front of my dress, the back is still long, right? Was it? So that would make a difference. If you're only catching a little bit here, that wouldn't, I'll do it over there. If you just catch this to avoid it, the back is still covered. Is that right? Is that clear? Dora, also what you said about Bible school, I thought if a young lady would carry her Bible like this, that would feel very natural and you wouldn't bump. I know that shock that goes through you. You said when you bump somebody, you feel, oh my, this shouldn't have happened. Any more?
What is that Western clothes she was talking about?
We haven't seen a lot of Western clothes within our own congregation as much as some of the remnant churches are having trouble with it. I really appreciated what you shared, Dora, there about identifying with the lawless West. I thought that was so good. And who does our clothing associate us with? We would never wear a t-shirt of a rock group. I mean, we wouldn't, because even if we get it at a garage sale for a nickel, we wouldn't wear it because we don't believe what it's promoting. But Western clothing, Betty, there might be more in Hutterite circles from Montana in that area. It is a specific style that has like men's shirts have a point on both sides, and vests, girls' vests, and I wanted to bring this out, and please don't feel self-conscious if you have one on. The vests usually have big points and tapers up, maybe little pockets. It looks, not denim itself, I'm not saying that, I think denim is very practical and can be used fine, but this kind of denim has more trim, more outer stitching on top that emphasizes more curves and points and things. Any other thought on what's Western?
Yeah, that's one thing. I was thinking mainly of the Western type of vests that come in, and they are made in a way that it really enhances your breasts and it enhances your trim waist, and it's so pointy and so, like you said, it's trimmed so excessively. And it's not only that, it's the look of such a denim, pointy thing on top of a simple plain dress, it just doesn't go with a princess. Another thing I wanted to mention that I forgot about, after I sit down, I think of everything I forgot. I wanted to mention about loose sleeves when it comes to hiding the chest area. Often our sleeves are so loose you can just look right in and see underwear, and I think that's another check you should do that I really wanted that on the tape. It's too bad. I wanted them to do a check when you go in front of the mirror, hold your arm out like this and see if you can zoom right in and see even the beginning of a swell or of your underwear. That is something to definitely avoid.
And also the depth of your armhole. If your armhole is deeper and you have on a white or a beige blouse where you can see the undergarment, either it needs to be lined or you need to have a full slip or a camisole, is that what they call? Little thing like that. On the points, I wanted to make that. When you have points, some years ago, there may be still some around, but there came a dress style that pointed directly to the holiest of holies. Do you remember the dresses? They were kind of tapered in, and then they were full. They were very full, but the point came right to the most private part of your body. I remember my preacher back home had a message one time. He had seen a girl at an airport, and she had a tattoo. She had on hip hugger pants, and she had a tattoo with a zipper from here down. I mean, it was just, come on. You know, the invitation was very clear. But again, it was drawing eyes to that part of your body, and of course we don't want to do that. Anything else?
This is in regards to when you were walking up the stairs and pulling your skirt up in the front, and it looked fine from the back. But I think part of that, too, is because of the fullness of your skirt. If you have a more narrow skirt and you pull it up in the front, it's going to come up in the back also. Into that. Yeah, and be tighter against your legs as you pull it up.
So it sounds like we do each other a great favor if we will do such things in front of our husbands. Say, how does this look at this angle? Is it fine? Because you really can. Lorene, the dress she had, when she was standing completely still, it was fine. But I can't imagine her making much movement without, jiggling in that or just revealing herself. And we don't stand perfectly still.
I was thankful for the encouragement she had for the youth girls that might not be virgins or might be might feel less than pure. Just a word of encouragement to them. If they are princesses, they are justified. And justified means just as if it had never happened. And that's the way God looks at you.
Anyone else?
I just had a question. I was wondering, how short is sleeves that are too short? I mean, I was making a dress the other day, and I was wondering how short was...
Anyone have a specific thought on how short is too short? I wonder again if shortness would also have to do with tightness, that if the two wouldn't go together, that you have to watch if it's full and short, if it's the same as if it's full and too tight. You'll notice in style coat, and I mean plain style, you'll see in, I often go by weddings because girls often make their bridal party and their wedding dress with what's more in style at that time among their peers. And you'll see that dresses are becoming more tapered, more straight, with not a gather here. And depending on your material, that can get really kind of, the roundness of your shoulder certainly is not as sensual as the roundness of your bust, but I think that there can be some appeal in that if it's not, doesn't have any fullness there, and depending on the kind of material. And truthfully, as women get older and their arms are loose, it's not even attractive, to have it that way. Anyone have a thought on length of sleeve? And probably, again, with the sleeve would be, not making it maybe with a lot of accessory to it, not fancying it up, which might be a temptation, or making 10 different kinds of sleeves. Do you really need 10 different kinds of sleeves? You find a basic pattern, and why isn't it just fine? Why do we have to make a thick cuff this time and a thin cuff this time and a ruffle this time? I don't know. I think that leads to discontent.
I just have a question. I was also wondering about the length of the sleeve. But when I think of modesty, if we make the sleeves really, really short, what are we suggesting? That's just a thought. Also, this summer, most of my sleeves I put elastic at the end. And my daughter made me a dress, which she gets more sewing done than I do, which I appreciate. And I told her I didn't want anything at the end of the sleeve, and it was a short, it came to the elbows. But one day, as we were sitting at the table, I reached my arm out, and my husband just said, "Oh," and he could see right down to my armpit, and I don't know, he didn't say much, but it was almost like he just kind of went, "Oh," and I thought, wow, and I haven't been real comfortable with that dress, and now just hearing Dora speak about it is like, for myself, it's just time to go home and fix that dress, and I think, I don't know, I've also just seen girls with, and I haven't seen it in our circles, but with their sleeves real loose. And I've seen them roll them all the way up to their shoulders. And what is that suggesting? It's a sleeveless dress. And is that just part of uncovering myself? Just a thought.
I think that's a real good balance, Lyd. And again, you would have the curve of your muscle here, again, the roundness of that, where if it comes all the way down, I personally would never go to further than right above the elbow, right to the elbow. Actually, I like it if you can pull it below the elbow and push it above the elbow. I like it because then it's loose and the elastic is not tight and it's full. When I went to Africa, we cut off some sleeves, and we, for that very reason, had to taper it at the bottom so that it wouldn't, that you couldn't see underneath the looseness under the arm. I think that's a good question. Anything else? I'm getting my exercise.
Another nice curve that young ladies have is from the side, from your arm out to the front of your bust. And a lot of these knit tops that are coming in that are tight, and people will wear them under jumpers, and I've seen them around. You'd have to wear a vest that goes all the way back to your arm to hide that nice bump that's there, which some of us have a nicer one than others. And I think those who have a nicer one are more responsible. So look at yourself from the side in the mirror too, with your blouses, and see if there's not too nice of something showing there.
Good point.
That was one thing I wanted to bring out on the mannequin, but I didn't have a jumper that even fitted that. I wanted to put a t-shirt type of top on, like a pullover or something. And those are fine if you want to have your jumper high enough in the side and high enough in the top. But what we can easily do is let the sleeve cut down, and even though you look perfectly modest from the front, from the side, that t-shirt is just hugging over your chest area. And that was something I wanted to bring out and I had forgotten about.
T-shirts remind me also, this summer there were lots of different activities going on. Some that I heard about, some Mennonite people had a swimming pool. Well, a swimming pool, the water is very clear, and so the level of modesty, what you are is what would be there. And they were talking about, they wear bathing suits with a t-shirt over top. Now, in my day, back in the 70s, we had what you called wet t-shirt contests. And of course they were vulgar, but the idea was who looks the best in a wet t-shirt. Well, what did they mean by who looks the best in a wet t-shirt? Obviously a wet t-shirt totally clings to you. And so putting a t-shirt over a bathing suit would not be acceptable in my mind at all for swimming. The material that it's out of, it would, when it's wet, you could just see right through it. So I wouldn't feel that was acceptable.
It wasn't touched on at all, but I have battled in my mind about lace and ruffles. When I was growing up, it's a sign of feminine, but it's also that of attraction. So I just wondered what other people thought about that, or could give me some clarity for my own heart in knowing how to talk about it with my girls.
I'd like some input from some others, maybe some others who grew up wearing lace and ruffles, maybe some who didn't, but who have cautions, and why you have cautions, why it's considered an extra and maybe an unwise practice. Someone willing to share?
I was also wondering about the ruffle thing, because I made a jumper once that was too short, and I went in front of the mirror and I was like, ooh. And so I put a pleated ruffle on it, and there was a guy staying in our house for Bible school, and he said, I like that ruffle. And he said, because I live with people that sew, and I know why you put that on, to be modest. So I put it on to be modest. I didn't want to be showy, but can be considered as a modesty thing, or as a showy thing?
Again, I think the spirit behind it, what will happen is, do you make the next one that way when you have the opportunity to make it longer? And I'm not saying you know, I'm saying to someone else. Will it be a stumbling block to someone else because they like it? I think depending on how it was done, I know Esther is going through a growing spurt, and we look at the length and we say, how could this be this length? We just made this dress 3 months ago, and we try to make them so that they'll last a while. Is there a way peaceably that doesn't offend each other? How do the rest of you feel when you would see that? Does it cause you a stumble, or do you realize that is there on purpose for modesty? What's your first thought? A lot of sisters have gone to a what do you call it, a blouse slip, and that seems to work really well. I was thinking something that can be done on a little girl's dress, probably easier if it is short. When material fades, it's difficult because you have to wash it a few times in order to make it longer. Sometimes you can put the insert in here and then put the material on the bottom of it, like let's say the material might not match. Or you could, if you can find the material again, you can make like a grow tuck. Do you know what a grow tuck is? You know, you can camouflage that by adding more material of the same, but it doesn't have a showy appearance. At least I don't think that it does. You know, let's say this is the bottom of my skirt. Now this is a little exaggerated there. Then you're putting the other material onto it underneath. So it has even if you didn't ruffle it so much, I don't think it would look showy. You know, if you obviously added it for length and not for flounce, I think it would make a lot of difference. And obviously that young man could tell why you had done it. So it must, I don't know the particular garment you're talking about, but it must have not looked showy to him, which I appreciate. So many times the issues are not black and white, and we have to be careful in judging that we not look at somebody, why did they do that? If you really do have a concern about something that a sister is wearing, I've been on the opposite side so often because of being ministry. People will come to us and say, I really think somebody ought to talk to them. Well, you know, that's really not scriptural. You should be the one that goes and talks to them. It shouldn't come, the ministry shouldn't have to go and say, well, several people have come to me about your dress. Do you know how much that hurts? Several people came to you, they didn't tell me. That is so crushing. We need to be honest enough and pure enough in our heart if we really care about something and aren't jealous, but that we really have a concern, that we will go to them and say, would you consider thus and so? think there was another hand here. Was it Mary?
I was just going to relate an experience that a sister in our church had. She got saved several years ago, and she had this denim jumper that she thought was too... she used to wear it at first when she was saved to come to church. And then she came around and she had about 3-inch ruffle on that was a different color. And then she put just a little lace, because the jumper had been washed out. The ruffle was not matching, even though they were both denim. She put a little lace around there to kind of hide it. And then I'm not sure how many months later she came around with another ruffle. As she progressed in her sanctification, her convictions became deeper. Now she comes around with this double ruffled denim skirt. And someone, not knowing her motive for doing it, said something to her that, you know, the lace that she put on. So she came to me in tears and said, "What do I do?" And so I think it depends a lot on our motive.
The truth is, not many of us are so poor or so strapped that we cannot make another dress. Maybe it won't be $4 or $5 a yard material, but around here, there are so many times you can get material for $1 or $2 a yard. And maybe you'll have to keep it for a while to only 2 church dresses. It doesn't matter, maybe only even 1. But it would be far better to have something that would not cause question or stumbling in somebody else. Dora spoke about garage sales yesterday, mentioned buying and sewing your clothes. I have a lot of caution about buying clothing at garage sales because many times it causes us to compromise. Well, it's got a little bit of this on it. I wouldn't put that on it, but you know, it only cost me $0.25. Well, the next person who's really attracted to that, I would just have caution on that. I'd be very careful, you know, like in this case, you know, she was sincere, and it probably wounded her, but I'm sure she had an open heart. She was able to receive and understand where somebody else was coming from, because we all are coming from different places, and God bless her for her effort.
One thing that I think was a struggle for me when we first came here is that I came from a different background, and many of the people who were raised plain understood simple things that weren't simple to me. And, you know, seeing the lace or the ruffles or certain buttons or different things like that, I may have done things innocently, not understanding. And I think it's good as sisters that we do have open communication and maybe relate some of these things to people coming in that may not understand, and they really have a heart to want to do what's right, but they just truly don't understand why we do things this way or why we don't do things this way. And I know it took me a long time to understand some things, and I took a lot of time to just pray and ask the Lord, and even through prayer, some things just weren't really clear. And so I'm thankful for this teaching, and thank you, Dora, for taking the time and all the studying that you did, and I really appreciate it.
I'm also wondering, what does it mean by love covers a multitude of sin? Even if that lady didn't, she did it, I'm sure, to say she wanted that dress longer. She didn't want to sew a different one and go buy and run and buy one. It was easier just to patch on. There's nothing sinful about that, even if she put lace on. Why don't people look at the heart of the lady more than on her dress?
Because we don't live in an ideal world. I mean, I agree, we should cover it. But Betty, the caution is for everyone else. To that sister, yes. But to the next one asking, let's not encourage them to do it if they have a choice. You know, let's try not to make the mistake where you have to cover it. Because in speaking with different churches across the country where they have these very things coming in, one week a girl shows up with a split in her skirt. well, she got it at a garage sale or whatever, and it's not real bad. Next week, 3 girls have splits, and they're a little bit longer. Of course, the whole goal is that we walk in the spirit of love, that we walk in grace, we walk in righteousness, where we're not fulfilled these lusts. But God gives us authority and ministry to help guide some of these things, because left to ourselves, I'm afraid we are pretty undiscerning about some of these things. So yes, let us as individuals love and not judge that she did something wrong and the motive behind to put the ruffle. Let's judge it right, but let's be careful that we answer it that way also and say why we did what we did so it is clear to others.
I apologize. I keep more and more these questions are coming. I realize what I missed on my notes going back and forth so much. But there was one thing I wanted to bring out is our primary goal in dressing, whether it is in how our clothing fits over us, whether it is in the largeness or smallness of the print, or whether it's a solid dress. Sometimes we feel good and think, well, I just wear solids, or others feel good, well, I just wear tiny prints, or our primary goal is to wear something that in a crowd of people you don't stick out. I have a burden. Some people say, well, I just believe in little prints, and this is not wrong, believing in little prints. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to just show the other side of the coin. Then these people come with bright little prints. You know, your primary goal as a princess is to wear something that is not shocking or outstanding. I mean, even a dark, solid black dress can, woo, you know, your eyes are just drawn to it, and some people think that's the plainest color you can wear. Our goal is to be as inconspicuous as we can be. I mean, I say as we can be. I realize that's kind of a statement, but it's just to be inconspicuous and not noticeable, not have people's eyes just zoom towards you wherever you are in a group, whether it's bright print, small print, big print, small print. It's just, that's the spirit of the princess, is not to be noticed. And one thing that I want to bring in about my little girls is that there are some things that are so beautiful in my little girls' hair, but I have noticed if I go to the store, maybe I can handle it as a mother, and maybe, I don't know, but people make comments that are absolutely anything but what little girls should hear. It starts building in them, and I have just decided already the most simple way I can do it, I should do it, so that people are not drawn to this thing and giving her the attitude of wanting attention.
Just a note on those little girls' hair. I heard a story about what was a lady who was speaking about mothers and talking to mothers. She had a friend who had a little girl with very beautiful hair. And this little girl had heard many times how beautiful her hair were. And one day they went to a restaurant, and the waitress didn't make any comment about her hair, and the little girl looked at her and she says, "Do you like my hair?" So, you know, and I know that I have a sister-in-law who had, she has a daughter with very pretty red hair, dark red hair. And when she was younger, she got many comments on her hair, and to the point where my sister-in-law felt she really needed to cover it up because the little girl was becoming vain of her hair.
I know that when you put a little girl's hair up in a way that is more drawn away from the face, you also draw to their pure countenance, which is just so precious.
One thought I had in relation to sewing, I face this now that I'm teaching my daughters to sew, and you know, we had the question about the lace and the ruffles, and you know, the young girls come along and they have a lot more ideas, you know, on how to do the dresses. I know each of us need to be under our husband's umbrella of authority in this. You know, Daddy, how do you want our dresses to be? And if we can come to a place where Daddy says, you know, this is a style that we're going to wear, and that Mom and the daughters, we fit into that, you know, I have to think, you know, we have quite a bit of liberty in our circles as far as this style or that, but you know, it can be a pitfall, because we can be using our creativity to come up with all these beautiful, delightful, nice, and there's probably nothing wrong with them. But the thing I feel that is really wrong is the time, the effort, all those things we're putting into creating this. And then, you know, a new dress, well, how should we make it? Should we do it like this or this? And what are we putting into our daughters? Where we could put the matter to rest and say, you know, we're going to make modest dresses and we're going to basically fit with this pattern. You know, it'll be different for different families, but that we can rest in that and bring our daughters a sense of contentment like we were hearing. And then with the frills and the lace and all that, you know, if we're trying to see what we can put on, well, what is the reason behind it? You know, what is our motive? So
I think that's good. And Dora, that the points you were making about modesty with each other, us women, we're not at each other's homes to where we would ever be undressing, but times like Bible school and that, I think it's also good to recognize that our girls' underclothing should be very plain, should be very simple and practical. You buy some wild, let's say, bikini panties for a teenage girl to wear. Why in the world do you want her to wear panties like that? For one thing, the line shows much easier on clothing. You can see it. She might look at herself in the mirror where she wouldn't be tempted to in plain cotton underclothing. The bras should be practical and they should do their job. They should be supportive, especially if she has some bust. We've had youth girls who went to Africa with the teams, and there was some actual flaunting in these little t-shirt nighties. Now it's very, very hot there, but with cutesy underclothes and little t-shirt tops, and they kind of were flaunting, and I didn't approve or appreciate those reports, and I hope that it's far removed, you know, as we look to another Bible school season, that you girls do cover yourself and try to be modest. I'm amazed, some of the young ladies we've had at our house, how they can get dressed in a room full of people, and you think, how did they do that? Because they never showed any skin. They've learned to slip their dress over and take their nightgown off, and, you know, I think that's wonderful. I think that that's important, that if you're going to sit around and eat popcorn in the evening, that you be totally covered, that there not be any temptation. That's the issue we didn't deal in a lot, and I don't want to, but that the issues of incest, those are very, very painful, damning issues. Anyone else? Are we ready to break for lunch? One more.
You talked about underclothes. How much does it matter if slip straps and bra straps show through the material in the back?
I guess it depends on what you're desiring to do. Many times, girls and young ladies are going to a style, a pattern where there's only a double layer in the front. It has a vest front, looks very nice, it's loose, but the back, depending on the color of the material or the tightness, shows very clearly the line. Why would you want to draw attention to your bra, whether it's thick or thin, or the straps, or if you're a little bit heavy, you know, it draws bumps, you know, from the back, and I can't see that our undergarment should ever show for any reason. And some materials you have to be extra careful about that, because some of them, even in a double layer, you know, it can still show. So does anybody disagree with that thought, that it's okay for your straps to show, or that we shouldn't be careful about that? I think you have to be careful also with the even your jumpers, you know, not just the blouse, but if your jumper neckline is too low and you're showing flesh or bra straps through that.
On behalf of our brothers, when we divide the churches, we were talking about, it would be fun to just sit as families. And we had a couple in our home that day, And he said, oh, I don't want to do that. And we said, well, could you share why? And he said, I struggle so much sitting behind sisters and seeing things that they don't know that I can see. And he comes from a life of very difficult past. And I don't think we really realize what we were doing to them. Half the time, you see a sister's extra bumps or lumps and you say, she doesn't know how she looks, and you forget about it. But they don't think of it that way. And that's the reason we're thinking about this.
On that line, when you have a dress that's maybe a pastel color, when you bend forward, even just to get a songbook, this strip in here between your slip and your double layer, I see it all the time. You can see a line of underclothing there and a strip of flesh that I know nobody intends to be showing. That's why many have gone to a vest or something over where that line is not so distinct.
I just wanted to add also that if you show the strap, it's a suggestive thing, and that's worse than the actual.
That's right.
Another thing that has been a concern to us as far as showing underclothes is with some of the knit materials, especially with the lighter colors, sometimes you can see the panty lines, even the ones, not just up top, the ones underneath. And of course, that's very suggestive too.
And have any of you purchased any of these? I think I have them on. I think they're called the best fitting panty in the world or something. Anyway, they're Walmart, but they're very comfortable, but they have a thicker ridge here. And sometimes at home, and you realize this is showing a cotton slip helps with that a lot. The thinner nylon slips just don't provide any break in that.
One more thing I wanted to mention was, as far as the backs, you're talking about the tightness of the backs, is it doesn't matter what style you're making it. If you're making it with a jumper or with a cape or with, a simple back, I think the back should be loose, not tight against the back, because you can still pretty well define a girl's shape if she's modest in the front and you see how far her bust comes out and she turns around and you see how small her waist is. You can pretty well define how that girl is shaped.
When I was talking about seeing the panty lines, what we had seen was not a tight skirt. It was a full skirt, but it was the thin, clingy material. And so even though there was fullness, it was clingy enough that you could still see.
Have you ever gotten home on a Sunday and realized that you should have had 2 slips on, or that your slip wasn't? We want to give grace. I'm sure it's happened to me. I don't know if it's happened to you, and I acknowledge that, and I want to be more careful about that. And while we're talking about undergarments, the slip being too short, if you have a dress on that's lighter colored and the slip only comes to the knee and you can see all the space, again, the suggestion of the legs moving underneath is more suggestive than, more attractive than a mini skirt itself.
I guess another thing I wanted to bring out that I've just seen lately was when we go out through the back doors and we have a light colored dress and a thin slip, you can see the whole way up to the top of the legs. And I found it helpful to put a shadow panel on the front or on the back. Even if you don't want to make the slip double the whole way around, that really is a benefit.
Do many of you get your slips from Flo-Ann, where they make slips? Do any of you get slips there? I went to Flo-Ann pleading for a thicker slip with more gathers, and she just laughed and said, well, women don't want that because it makes them look fat. And I thought, she is making totally for the Mennonite community, and it's right, it's our pride. We don't want to look fat. And it does make us look bigger. There's no doubt that it does. But again, Dora, you had mentioned, I don't know if you were going to in this session, about weight with us, with us ladies as we get bigger. After when you're nursing a baby and your bust is bigger, you have to make, allotments for that. When you're pregnant, you have to make allotments for that. But we can't excuse it that we've gained weight. If you've gained weight and you don't want to be where you are, well then, hopefully you can seek to get some help on that issue. But temporarily, wear a vest, wear a sweater. I hide behind my sweaters and vests many times if I don't feel my dress is quite what I would like it to be, or if because I'm heavier, it hides a multitude of sins.
I feel led to share. I knew of a young person that struggled with impure feelings by the way they dressed, and I think it's important how we even dress in our night clothes personally. It can stir impure feelings in our own hearts, and we would struggle with wrong thoughts or wrong feelings because of the way we dress. I think we should be concerned about how others think and feel and things that stirs in their minds, but we must also be concerned about ourselves.
Again, that's why I think the underclothes is so important, because the privacy of a girl's own bedroom, we don't want her, admiring and looking at, lace and things that make them look more attractive in their underclothes. It's not the season of life for that at all.
Okay, one thing I wanted to mention in this session was that references made to body parts were being referred to a mannequin we used to bring out pointers. We used a mannequin to bring out modesty pointers. And another thing was, during the first session, I brought out the need of accepting the body that God gave us, and of the danger that it becomes once we begin to focus on it and change it. Some girls seem to believe that they can handle it and never realize how the spirit of a harlot can get a hold of them. They also do not realize how that spirit gets transferred and strengthened through generations. One girl may merely think a lot of her appearance, whether it's the perfect form or not. This girl's daughter progresses to self-consciousness to the degree of bulimia or anorexic. The granddaughter goes on to become a fornicator, and the great-granddaughter to an adulterer or harlot. This does and has happened, and I plead with you to find your fulfillment in Christ and break this chain.
Thank you for listening. We hope this message has blessed you. If you would like additional messages or a catalog, please visit our website at ccfsermons.org. Call us at 855-55-CHARITY or write to us at Charity Christian Fellowship, 59 South Groffdale Road, Leola, PA, 17540. This ministry is supported by your donations. May Jesus Christ be Lord of all.